Hello and welcome. It is another rousing edition of the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. I'm Matt Michaels. Hello to you, Brad Trinago.
Hello to you. It's all happening right now. You've got the winter sports that are winding down for sure, but you got a couple that are definitely in full swing, and one program in particular that's got a lot of potential for some good stuff coming up the next couple
Swinging
weeks.
perhaps from an uneven bar? Yes, we will talk about that in a moment. First, we'll thank our friends at Shelter Insurance for powering the podcast, ranked #1 in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central Region by J.D. Power. 6 of the last 7 years. We're your shield, we're your shelter. And Tiger fans say aloha to Hawaiian Bros, where the island-inspired flavors are positively delicious. You'll love favorites like Huli Huli Chicken, Luau Pig, and the delectable Dole Soft Serve. Hawaiian Bros is just south of campus on Grindstone Parkway, or order online at hawaiianbros.com. Can report Mizzou baseball after its win against Illinois Tuesday night enjoyed delectable Hawaiian Bros, and it hit the spot.
Excellent, and they deserved it. That was a solid win. We'll talk more about coming up.
We will indeed. We will also talk about a very successful night session for Mizzou Gymnastics, 4th at the SEC Championships, a couple of conference champions individually to talk about, and we are graced by the reigning SEC Coach of the Year. As announced right before our podcast is recorded, Shannon Welker is with us on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. Congratulations to you and your team. You set a goal of this. You achieved your goal. You competed in the night in Birmingham. Congratulations for that.
Hey, thanks very much. Excited to be here and chat with you guys today.
What does it mean, for people, again, it's the top 4 that get the opportunity to compete in that night session. As it turned out, it's your team that's 7th in the country, and it's number 1, 2, and 3 in the nation that are all in there with you. What was that experience like to be able to compete on that stage for the first time?
Yeah, well, not ironically, the number 1, 2, and 3 teams in the country are all in the SEC, right? So, I mean, we had seen all those teams this year, and so we were, I think, prepared to be at that level, and they performed really well, and it was really cool. I think if you're doing a good job in a competition, you really are a little bit oblivious of what's happening on the other events because there's no defense, right? So you can just focus on your own offense and your own performance, and if you do those things, you'll typically end up doing your best work.
Yeah, and no defense really has to apply to ramping up performance, right, at the end of the season. We had heard in some spaces about, trying to make sure you get a certain percentage of sticks or trying to make sure that the little individual parts of a routine come together. How in the last month have you seen that develop from your perspective amongst each individual athlete on your team?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think different people are going to evolve and get better at different times of the year, very similar to different kind of aspects of our program. In regards to vault, might make some strides at different times in bars or beam or floor, different parts, and you're just hoping to get those all in the same spot by the end of the year, similar to maybe like offense and defense and special teams all functioning at a high level, at certain points in the year, and so it takes some time to evolve. But yeah, it's been great. I've really seen a lot of development in our freshmen. Our senior leaders are doing a great job out there. They walked away with 2 SEC titles this last weekend, as a matter of fact. So really pleased on how things are going. We're really at a point where we're just trying to make sure that we are maintaining in some areas more so than getting better.
That 1974 score at the SEC championship meet, was that kind of what in the range of what you were looking for? Where does that?
Yeah, I thought if we did a good job, we could be in that mid 197s, which we were, and we had some really great events. I think bars and floor were exceptional. Those were in like the top 4 out of all teams there, if not the top 2. Actually, we were second on floor. We could have done a little bit better on vault and beam, and I think had we done that, we could have probably vied for that 3rd spot in overall in that session. But I think overall, the scoring was pretty solid, and that actually helped our NQS, which is our national qualifying score. It moved it forward a little bit there, and really set us up well for what a postseason talent-loaded session is going to look like.
Yeah, when you know that you're going in as the 4 seed on a night and they say, okay, go ahead and start on beam. I think a lot of teams look at that and say, oh, well, this is where you could see deductions, right? Because there's the balance part of the balance beam. How did you approach it leading up to the SEC tournament to say, okay, we know that this is here, so let's attack this a certain way as the leadoff?
Yeah, I mean, you have to do all the apparatus and all the events there. So we were prepared for that. I mean, we kind of figured we'd start on vault or sorry bars, beam or floor, and so we had kind of practiced that along the way. So that was a good thing because there's a high probability that we will start on that same event as we move into the NCAA regionals rounds here, and so that was great preparation for us.
Of course, your queen on the beam is the SEC Event Specialist of the Year, Helen Hu. And for people who aren't familiar, it's just a remarkable story. She goes backpacking around the world with her sister. She swings by after that year, and she hops on and starts doing part of her routine. And you're like, hey, if you want to come back, you got another year. And she gives it some thought, and she decides, yeah, she's going to go for it. And then she sets a record in terms of the number of times she was the Specialist of the Week in the conference. A couple perfect 10s in there. What has it meant to have Helen Hu back in that group with you this season?
Yeah, I mean, how cool is this story, right? Like, this is really somebody should do a little biography on her and do this documentary. I mean, she's scored 2 perfect 10s. She's 5-time SEC Gymnast of the Week, SEC Specialist of the Year, SEC Balance Beam Champion, right? And we got some more season to go. I mean, so cool that she could come back and achieve a lot of these things with us and for the University of Missouri and for herself. So, boy, she's just a leader over there and just really brings a calming presence, knowing that she's somebody that we've got coming up at the end of that lineup.
And what does it mean, too, to have another veteran in Mara Titarsoli close the night with her perfect 10, third of her career on the uneven bars? She recorded the first 10 in history on that apparatus for your program just last season. To have her leadership in a space where she knows she's got a chance at that every single time has to be pretty extraordinary to know every time you run out a bars lineup, you've got a chance at 110 in your lineup just by her taking the floor.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Helen on beam, Mara fills that same role on balance or on an even bars over there. And heck, she probably would have got a lot more event specialists of the week had Helen not been here. Quite honestly, she's probably the number 2. So, but awesome. I mean, she's not only is uneven bar champion, but she's back-to-back SEC champion on the uneven bars. I mean, that's incredible. I don't think that's been done quite a bit, and I know it's never been done here at University of Missouri for us.
Tiger fans, say aloha to Hawaiian Bros, where the island-inspired flavors are positively delicious. You'll love favorites like huli huli chicken, luau pig, and the delectable Dole soft serve. Hawaiian Bros, just south of campus on Grindstone Parkway, or order at hawaiianbros.com.
2 others that were all SEC, Amari Celestine and Jocelyn Moore. They're now the first 4-time all SEC performers in Mizzou history. What have those 2 meant to this program?
Consistency, right? Just consistently bringing a high level, and I think if you go back and just look at the progress in the last 4 years, it's not hard to connect the dots between Amari and Jocelyn and Mizzou Gymnastics success. I mean, they've been just steady Eddie. They've been rocks, and just they bring so much confidence, and they're so great with their younger teammates. I mean, just leaders, and they really have a lot to do with the progress that we made, and I'm going to miss them next year, I'm sure.
How important is it for you to manage reps at this time of season, considering the length and the grueling nature of your sport and your year?
Yeah, we talk as a coaching staff all the time, and we're like, okay, how are we going to do this? Because, different student athletes need different things. And actually, even earlier this week when we got back, we gave our kind of sophomores or juniors and up, we gave them an extra day of rest and they just did conditioning yesterday. And so today was actually their first day back doing gymnastics. Now, our younger guys, they got going a little sooner. They got an extra day the day prior yesterday. So you really do have to manage it, and you have to understand who needs what to be at their best, and you have to put the time into individualizing what that means. Now, there is some teamwork group training we have to do, but there is definitely some individualization for each person to help them be freshest at this point.
The individuals we've been talking about are a lot of your veterans, your seniors, and your graduate students. Certainly want to make sure to highlight Kennedy Griffin, just a sophomore. She notched a 10 on the floor over at St. Charles back in February. Did you feel that score coming for her as this season has been going along?
I certainly knew she was capable of it. So that was really cool to see somebody else get a 10-0 besides one of our seniors, because we want to have that coming back next year. So that's awesome. And another young lady that works so hard, just a wonderful representative of our program. This was her first year. She was runner-up on floor at SEC championships. She and Jocelyn Moore. As well, this is her first time she's an All-American this year. It hasn't been announced, but she's a regular season All-American, which is awesome. So, and there couldn't be just a more passionate and leader that we've got on our team outside of our seniors than Kennedy Griffin.
As you look at the way that you have been able to build and recruit to this program, success begets success. But what do you notice out of these younger athletes coming in that gives you great confidence that what you've established is going to be able to continue in the most competitive environment in collegiate gymnastics?
Yeah, it's been so much fun to see the interest we have and people that want to come to our program. Just not only great gymnasts, but great people. And I think that great people, that piece of it is something that has really helped us move forward, and just culturally and those things. I'm excited for our current freshman class. They are so talented. They haven't had as many opportunities because we have so much depth. But boy, next year they're going to really, you'll see they're going to take over, and they're going to drive us. And we got we got a 5-star coming in next year in Kamara Eccles. She is awesome. And we got some other young ladies to join her that are going to really help continue what we've set this year.
Well, talking about building a program, I think on the floor, which according to Road to Nationals as of Wednesday morning, I think you were 4th in the country in the floor. And I believe at least in that Zoo to the Lou meet, and maybe it's been that way all year, but I think you have someone in every class that competes in the floor, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So has that been something specifically with the floor? What has it been about that group that has led to so much success for them?
Yeah, well, we as a coaching staff had a little bit of a competition on who could get 10 people involved in their lineups the quickest. Like that was one of our goals. Like all right, because we wanted it early on in the season. We just wanted to make sure we got some of our younger guys some opportunities there. And so we really there's no quota we're trying to fill in regards to getting a freshman in there or getting a sophomore in there. We're going to put up the best 6 every week, and that may change at times, but it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really excited again for those young ladies to get their more opportunities, I think, as we move forward in the years on there. But floor has been awesome for us this year. Number 4 in the country, right? That's awesome stuff. I mean, so we're really excited about that and feel like that's been a strength of ours this year.
Does that competition persist even in the lead up to NCAA competition? Can the best 6 still change?
Oh, absolutely. I think that competition, now we've probably got it pared down to about, we're going to put up 6, obviously. We have it probably pared down to about 7 at this point. So we still can flip one in and out of there. And that's important because we'll have some multi-day tournaments. So regionals, right, we'll have a day 1 and then we'll have a regional final. Those are only 2 days apart. So we need to have the ability to be able to move people in and out and be our best, and that really is we feel like a strength of ours is that we've got 6. We've got a couple extras that we can pop in there.
Heading into postseason mode now, but I wanted to make sure we highlighted one of the peaks of the regular season for your team. I remember it felt like just a couple years ago where getting into the 197s as a team score was a really big deal, and then March 9th against Auburn at Hearns, a 198.1. What came together to make that score possible that night?
Yeah, I had a bunch of alums that were at that event, and we were chatting afterwards, and they're like, it took us way longer to get to the 197 mark than it felt like the 198 mark. And they're right, it took a lot longer to get there. So, boy, we were just firing on all cylinders that night, and I felt like they were geared up and ready to go. Auburn's a great program, but we felt like we had a stronger team, and we were definitely of the mindset that we were going to show everybody that we could not only beat them, but also achieve at a super high level. And we're only one of 5 schools in the country to be at that 198 plus mark, so that's pretty special.
I guess the story of this is still to be written, but do you feel like it opens up opportunity for you as a program to achieve that number and have everybody know, yeah, this is possible at a place like Missouri?
Absolutely. I mean, the teams that have achieved that are the top 5 or 6 schools in the country, and so that's fantastic that we can do those things, and I think it's really helped us in the confidence-wise within our program that we're achieving at that level. But again, that recruiting piece, it's enormous, right? To gain that respect and that interest from some of the top young ladies in the country.
Is this your best team?
I think it can be. I think it definitely has the ability to be. But we got to prove it, though. We got to go out and prove it, and we've got this weekend, this next weekend, and then what we plan on at NCAA championships to prove that. We're 5th in the country in 2022. I really feel like this is a team that, if they're firing on all cylinders at the right time, they can be one of the last 4 teams competing in this season.
Yeah, and that's a goal that we had heard you'd set for yourself at the beginning of this ride. How do you feel it resonates with your athletes amongst your program to say we're going to set these goals and they're lofty, and so far you've been able to check box after box after box this year?
Yeah, you have to make them challenging, and you have to reach a little bit, but I've never been a fan of setting goals that were unattainable. That's silly. That doesn't make you feel good about things, but you got to make them a little bit high. And so they know, and I think our team's smart enough to know, like, hey, if we're setting these goals, our coaches feel like these are achievable things, and it definitely helps as we've achieved some of those along the way this season. But yeah, we're excited about it. I think this can be the best Tiger squad we've ever seen in about 45 years of Tiger gymnastics.
No, we're looking forward. Like you said, you got to prove it out there in competition, and we so look forward to that opportunity that your team gets in Seattle, and then beyond is what we're looking forward to as well. For Shannon Welker, Mizzou Gymnastics, joining us here on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. All the best to you as you head into NCAAs, Coach. Again, we're so excited for what's ahead for you and your program, and thank you for spending some time with us to talk about it.
All right, appreciate you guys. MIZ.
ZOU. That's Shannon Welker. We'll be back, Brad and I, with a whole bunch of other things going on inside Mizzou Athletics after you hear from our friends at Shelter Insurance.
This episode of Mizzou Storytellers on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast is brought to you by Shelter Insurance. Ranked number 1 in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central Region by J.D. Power 5 out of the last 6 years. We're your shield. We're your shelter.
And the podcast is also powered by Socket. Socket Fiber is now available. It is the fastest, most reliable internet combined with local service and simple billing. Contact Socket today for voice data and internet services for your home and business. 1-800-SOCKET3 or visit socket.net. And Sophia's and Addison's restaurants. They're great local spots to visit before or after all Mizzou home games. Addison's has 2 locations in Southwest and downtown Columbia and features over 20 beers on tap, including local brewers and, of course, the famous Nachos Biancos. So remember, before or after the game, stop by Addison's.
The only thing faster than Socket's internet might be Amari Celestine sprinting toward a vault, perhaps? Something
Could be.
like that?
It might be. I mean,
they go real fast.
Do we know the peak sprint speed on the gymnastics team?
It's got to be up there, man. They are moving, and then they just hurdle themselves at an object and then jump in the air and do a bunch of crazy flips. It's wild.
Thanks very much, of course, to Coach Welker for joining us and spending a little bit of time. When you have a new honorific, obviously it elevates him above lowlies like us. So we're glad that Coach was able to join us here. I mean, no, really, you hold your projection. By going in the night session, you finished 4th. I could maybe argue that maybe Missouri got a little bit underscored. I don't know if it would have moved them from 4th to 3rd, but they did have 2 rotations, certainly, and Floor was dynamite at 49.6 that were representative of what we've seen from this team really of the past several weeks. And so now you take that into regional competition, the 7th national seed heading out to Seattle, and you would be projected to make the night session there, and you would be projected to advance to the Dallas, Texas area down in Fort Worth. So I think that everything is moving as projected and as hoped for Mizzou Gymnastics. Now it's just a matter of executing when it counts.
So Mizzou in that first session coming up on the 4th will be with Georgia and then also Arizona and Arizona State. And the Wildcats and Sun Devils, their average scores both in the 196 range. Mizzou, for perspective, is at 1975. So the Tigers are in really good shape to make that second session, if you will, in terms of regionals out in Seattle. And then you got Oklahoma in there, and you might see another SEC school in Auburn on the other side. But like you said, Mizzou for the first time ever, they put themselves in a position where, just going off the seed, the expectation will be that they will make that Final Eight and the NCAA championships, and just continuing to raise that bar. I mean, you talked about, boy, it seemed like they were a little bit underscored in that SEC championship, and they finished with a 1.974 as a team. And I remember even just a couple years ago talking about scores like 1.974 as tremendous accomplishments, and they are still very impressive. But again, that expectation just keeps going up and up and up, and this team has a real opportunity to do something special in April.
It does help when you close your entire night on a 10. That does tend to bump you up by maybe a tenth or so on the team score. And Mara Tito-Soli, there's not much more you can say about her performance at the biggest moment when it counts the most. She comes up with her third 10, and congratulations to her. And, of course, the specialist of the year would be none other than Helen Hu. I mean, how could you possibly see otherwise when she got 5 specialists of the week, and then she has her co-crown? I thought there were honestly a lot of 10s at the event, considering, and so you kind of have to keep pace, to be quite honest. Amara was able to do that for the Tigers, so congrats to her and Helen on their individual accomplishments.
For sure, and peeking ahead, it's kind of exciting when you see that it seems like the ceiling on 3 of the 4 events is 10 for a Tiger. We've seen it now in 3 of the 4 different disciplines. So Mizzou, again, they're in just a really good spot to do some special and maybe even historic things coming up in April.
A 10 and some 9.9s will serve you well in any rotation. Like a 10, 2 9.9s, and just everybody else very solid can get you into really, really good places. Could get you where they want to be, which is that final night down there in Big D. So we will look forward to that, of course, for Mizzou Gymnastics. There has been plenty to discuss, still developing with Mizzou women's basketball. Kelly Harper has named an assistant coach, and I think it is always good news in 2 different fronts. When you, A, hire away a current Division I head coach from anywhere, and B, you get someone who was your assistant and went to that world to come back and be your assistant. And that's the pedigree of Jennifer Sullivan and kind of the story between her and Coach Harper's relationship. I think it's a fantastic hire for Missouri, and I think it portends really well in so many different areas that you'd see someone who really wants to be a part of what Coach Harper has in her program.
And Coach Sullivan, worked for Coach Harper at both Tennessee and Missouri State, has the Division I experience at Florida Atlantic, like you mentioned. So just, it seems like a hire that makes a lot of sense as Coach Harper, builds, not only her staff, but obviously the roster is going to look a lot different. That's become pretty common in this era whenever you have a coaching change. The transfer portal for women's basketball opened on Tuesday, and so you've got, the opportunities there, on both the men's and the women's side now with those windows open, and things will look a lot different, I'm sure, whenever the season tips off in November.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. What was it on the men's side? I think I saw 700 plus on day 1 enter the portal. It's what it is, right? That's what it is. Everybody chooses every year where they want to be. It really is a choice now every year. I like it because I think it means that the players that you have in your program are players that have positively chosen to be a part of your program. And so that will apply on all sides when it comes to hoops and really everything that we see going forward until, something comes down in a court docket that looks a lot different than what we have now.
Yeah, and I would say just really quickly, congratulations and good luck to Robin Pinchton, the former Mizzou women's basketball coach, now the head coach over in Wisconsin. So she'll be migrating over to Big Ten country, and we wish her well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've mentioned all this, and it's like we're burying the lead when you have a win over a number 1 team in your back pocket. And Mizzou softball got that over Oklahoma in front of a record crowd on a record-setting weekend. On Saturday, they sent everyone home happy with that 3-1 victory by scoring early and maintaining. Has to be the best performance we've seen from Sierra Harrison over the course of her season this year. Taylor Pinnell coming in and getting the save in that ball game. A well-played softball game at a high level with a high-level opponent. I mean, there were some folks externally who thought like, okay, yeah, good luck. Oklahoma's going to continue this role that they have with 30-plus games of a winning streak going back to their championship in the Women's College World Series last season. And then Missouri put an end to that. You only get 1 game, but when it's against Oklahoma and their lofty standards, getting 1 game can leave you feeling really good. And now into a midweek against Kansas, which we don't unfortunately have the results of, but you know that the Tigers will be fired up for that. And then on down the road, it could be a very significant turning point of this season if Missouri is able to rally from knowing that they can play with and beat the very best in this country.
Well, not only was that win on Saturday just enormous considering who they were up against, but also a program record 4,146 fans saw it, so that was great for the institution. And Madison Walker and Taylor Ebbs both with home runs in the game, RBI double from Stefania Abriscato. You mentioned Harrison and Pinnell getting it done, so yeah, certainly a huge performance all over. That's the first win for Mizzou over a number one team since topping Florida a decade ago. And even in a diamond sport, those number one teams don't go down very often. So to be one of the teams that does it, that's great. And now can you carry that momentum into some games this week and try and fatten up that SEC record a little bit?
Yeah, the weekend at Ole Miss is going to be pivotal for Missouri in terms of what they're able to accomplish. And then they'd come home on April the 2nd and they get Missouri State. So it's like the rivalry SEC showdown series here for Mizzou at home between Illinois and Kansas and Missouri State. So we look forward to seeing just how this could be a launching pad for this team going forward. The baseball team might have one of its own. They won on Tuesday in the midweek against Illinois after a tough weekend against Ole Miss. The bullpen really let them down against the Rebels, to be quite honest. You just never seem to find a way through it. They got really good starting pitching on Friday from Ian Losi. Fell in that ball game 9-6. I like the way the Tigers fought at the plate, and I think something that we have seen now very consistently throughout the season, and people who are actually paying attention to this whole thing will notice, Missouri's offense is pretty solid. They're hitting about 290, maybe a little bit above on the course of the season. They're able to hit home runs. They are more offensively oriented than they were a season ago. Now you just have to get the pitching together to go with it. Tony Newbeck is on the mend. We might see him in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We might see Sam Horn in the same time frame as now football is done. He has started side work. And pitchers like Daniel Whistler may be coming back from some early injury after pitching only in one game this season. The cavalry may be coming, but it might be up to Missouri's offense to get them some runs before then, and it's not like they're going to have anything easy coming up this weekend with the Texas Longhorns, a top 10 team in town.
This episode of Mizzou Storytellers on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast is brought to you by Sophia's and Addison's Restaurants. Sophia's and Addison's Restaurants are great local spots to visit before or after all Mizzou home games. Addison's has 2 locations in Southwest and downtown Columbia and features over 20 beers on tap, including local brewers and, of course, their famous Nachos Bianco. So remember, before or after the game, stop by Addison's.
Well, and the name Sam Horn, I'm sure, is going to get some people talking and thinking that are Tiger fans out there. What's the expectation for him, reasonably, as he comes off of spring ball and off of the big injury?
Well, the expectation is if he's at 100%, that he can throw 95, 96 with location and put in a nasty slider and maybe even work in a changeup now and again. I mean, that's how good he is. But he is going to be, whenever he takes that mound, in his first outing back from Tommy John surgery. And really a 2 full season saga of being out, at least on the baseball diamond with it. After he went off that field at Florida International University, it was like, oh man, don't let this be what we fear it might be. And it was. And then Horn went through a spring football camp and all this. And then finally, when the decision was made, we got to get the Tommy John and get this right. The hope is that 13 months removed from that, you can see Sam Horn be up and at him and looking as good as ever. They will work him along, I'm sure, as carefully as necessary in the side preparations to get him going, but he's throwing a baseball. We know that. And if he's throwing a baseball competitively on the mound, I feel confident it won't be at anything less than 100%, and then it's just a matter of executing. And if Sam Horn executes, I've seen 4 innings of his college career. I've seen enough to know that he could be Missouri's Friday night starter if he gets stretched out and ready by the end of this season.
It's encouraging. Well, we'll hope for the best on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot else going on. Congratulations on individual honors across the Southeastern Conference. It feels like there's just honor after honor going on these days.
You want to talk a little tennis here?
Why not? Tennis, anyone?
Yeah, let's go back to the win. First off, a win against a top 25 program on the road, number 22 at the time.
First
Florida.
one in a while.
Yeah, 4-3 was that one last Friday. Layla Bashir is the SEC Player of the Week. She picked up a clutch 7-5, 7-6 win to clinch that one for the Tigers, and she also picked up a win on the doubles side, so congratulations to her. Got Ole Miss coming to town Friday afternoon. They're a top 50 program, and then on the road, actually, against a ranked LSU team on Sunday in the morning, and then also Southern down in Baton Rouge coming up Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking forward to seeing what this tennis team can do. Now you've got a couple of ranked ones in your back pocket. You've put yourself back in the national ranking scene by doing that. I think that gives Missouri an opportunity to really build, and something that Coach Tarati, I know, has been working on building for quite a while over there.
Absolutely. Props to Coach Tarati for what appears to be, the first couple steps in trying to build something, and always challenging SEC.
Yeah, and I would never have a moving day on the golf course like Trent Merle did for Missouri. He finished very, very well. 7 under in round 3 is enough to move you up. I think it was 16 spots to a T7 at the Hootie at Bulls Bay. Do I need to say that in my Nan's voice? At the Hootie. Hello, friends.
It is about that time of year for Mr.
Yes,
Nance.
it is.
Yeah, so good stuff from Trent. Just a freshman too to move up like that and shoot a 65 on the final round of an event. Mizzou as a team finished 5th in that event in South Carolina. Season best 21 under par over the 3-day tournament as a group, and the Tiger Intercollegiates coming up at Old Hawthorne the 7th and 8th of April.
Yeah, very much so. And the women's golf team, 5th of 13 at the Florida State matchup in Tallahassee.
Got a win, a top 25 victory, if you will, over a Houston team among the teams that they beat. So women's golf also making some nice strides. And they'll be against Georgia Southern on Sunday, April 6th. And then it's the Liz Murphy Collegiate Classic. And after that, and both those events will be in Athens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much looking forward to how the golf teams proceed throughout the spring, because sometimes you get on that heater in spring and all of a sudden you're there right at the end. And I think both sides will have an opportunity to do that, certainly with the promising results of this past weekend. Congratulations are in order to Keegan O'Toole and to Cam Steed, who both are All-Americans for the University of Missouri. Keegan fell in the national championship bout to Dean Hamady of Oklahoma State. No shame in that. Once again, they went into sudden victory, and it was Hamady who got the takedown in sudden victory in overtime period 1. And Cam wrestled his way. You watched it in the blood round, didn't you? I wasn't able to see it. But he basically pulled it out from the fire to get himself into the All-American and into the team scoring at that meet.
Kind of shades of one of Jaden Cox's national titles. They all ran together, so that's a compliment to Jaden. But there was one, where he was about to get, lose points right at the buzzer, and it ended up it was just after the buzzer in round 3. So yeah, Steed was able to pull that out, and he was going up against for 7th place. He was going up against a 4-time All-American from Oklahoma State. That was his final bout on Saturday. Had lost to him twice previously. Pins him in the 7th place match. So 3 pins over the weekend for Cam Steed in his first appearance at the NCAA tournament, and he leaves with an All-American nod. So yeah, great showing for him.
I guess the moral of the story is be either Keegan O'Toole or Keegan O'Toole's practice partner, and good things will happen.
It helps, right?
Or appear on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast.
That also
that
helps. Yeah, O'Toole is a previous guest, so I think that it's clearly, it's at least correlated. There's got to be a causation in there somewhere.
Brad, I know I'm missing something. I know that track was outside this past weekend, so you always have a great track note for us.
Can confirm track and field outside. They opened their outdoor season at the Yellow Jacket Invitational at Atlanta last weekend, and then they've got events that'll be hosted by LSU and NC State this coming weekend on the way. Good luck to the 11 Tiger men who are competing at the NCAA Swim and Dive Championships in Seattle this week. The women competed in their national championships last week. Wrestling as a team, by the way, finished 14th in Philadelphia in nationals. And we haven't talked about men's basketball yet on the pod. Obviously disappointing that the way it ended against Drake on Thursday with a 67-57 loss there.
That was on Thursday?
It was.
It feels like it was ages ago.
I know, right? Yeah, so that was one of the first games of the tournament, so we haven't talked about it here yet. But yeah, that game, obviously a bummer how it ended in Wichita, but overall a 22-win season. Coming off a year where you were winless in the SEC, tremendous strides there, and just hope, again, transfer portal's open right now in basketball, so we'll see what the roster looks like heading into November, but the goal is to just build off of the successes that we saw, especially in the regular season this go around.
Well, it was a massive turnaround, and I think that it probably stands, if you take a step back and think of it from a holistic standpoint. Dennis Gates called it a special group, and it seemed that the people who were in that room after an 0 for 18, the ones who stayed, understood what it would take to get back to the place that they expected to be. And in terms of competing in the toughest conference that we've ever seen in men's hoops, they did the things necessary to do that. You can argue till you're blue in the face about what happened down the stretch and some close ones that didn't go your way. But with all that said, you would have been wandering in the wilderness had it not been for the makeup of those who were there and returned, and the makeup of those coming in deciding that they will commit themselves to this as well. And I think it bodes very well for the future that we see basically anybody who's eligible who got a lot of minutes. We didn't see them jumping into the portal right away. Now, things can happen, right? I mean, there's still a lot of time left to go. But the general impression is that you'll see a lot of familiar faces back on this team next year. That is really, really good news for Dennis Gates, for his program, and for Missouri fans.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And, some really memorable moments that, I at least it's going to be a long time before I forget what that atmosphere was like at Mizzou Arena for the wins against Kansas and Alabama. Tremendous win on the road against a Florida team that's still playing in the Sweet 16, just knocked off the defending national champs in UConn. So a lot of good stuff from this year. Didn't end the way you wanted, but like you mentioned, it appears there's going to be a nice base of returners to try and build on this thing.
Do we need to apologize to Mr. Surem because we heard him say his name? And it was not at all how we said it on the podcast.
Seems like, we've said it a few different ways.
Jonathan, we apologize.
Yeah, we haven't had any luck actually getting the correct pronouncer until now, but yeah, apologize on that. Congrats on the indoor national championship again to Jonathan in the triple jump, and all the best to him going forward. We should also mention that the women's basketball introductory press conference for Kelly Harper, that's coming up on Monday of next week at 11, and we're going to have that broadcast offered on select Central Bank Tiger Network radio stations, and then later on Monday, it'll also be on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast feed. So if you have like a real job unlike us and you're not able to attend, it is free if you want to go to the Mizzou Arena practice gym. If you can't attend in person or you can't listen on the radio because you, again, might have an actual job, you can catch it on demand on the podcast feed later on.
Are you suggesting we don't have an actual job? It is our job to be there, right?
It is our job to be there, but I again, when I compare it to someone who has to do labor, I have a hard time feeling like this is a real job.
I mean, it's a fun job. It's a job, but it's a nice job.
I get the chance to hang out with you all the time, at least once a week, Matt. That doesn't feel like work.
Aw. That's too kind.
You're welcome, buddy.
You're going to make me feel all Nance sappy up in here. It is about that time.
April's
almost here.
Yeah.
We'll find a way. We'll try to get an Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast bump in these last 2 weeks, and maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll see a familiar face qualify at the death for the big one.
Yeah, or I'll pick you a vase full of azaleas, and I'll have that on the table coming up for our April edition of the podcast.
That's really too kind. That's too kind.
That literally would.
You know what I mean? That's too kind.
Probably would be too kind. We should mention too that as the winter sports have kind of winded down here for Mizzou Athletics, our podcast content may wind down a little bit as well. So just be aware of that. But we will be with you at to be determined times coming up in the spring and the summer, and then we'll be back with a vengeance, of course, whenever football starts ramping up.
Of course. Well, we certainly wish all the best, again, if we don't get to mention it, to Mizzou Gymnastics as they head off to regional competition in Seattle. Enjoy the nicer weather at this time of year. Hopefully it isn't all rainy. Inside it doesn't rain, so that's great. And we hope to see them again surviving and advancing when it comes to what happens on the mats. Thanks as well to Coach Welker for being with us. For Brad Trinago and for Andrew Bristow, who we would not forget, who had his head in his hands several times during this podcast, surely out of sheer joy, I'm Matt Michaels. We'll talk to you next time on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast.